Pleasure. Good morning. It is a pleasure to be here this morning. And when Tatum's dad called me, I knew I was coming. I wasn't sure how easy it was going to be to get from Tennessee to here, but it ended up not being any trouble at all. And for all those concerns that we sometimes have about who's our friends and who's not, I didn't get any pushback from Zoetis. I got nothing but support. It was those are our customers. What is our stated mission statement? To protect the health of animals and man and to ensure a safe food supply. Where would anything RCAF ever done be against that? So I am glad to be here, and I changed the title of my presentation this morning when I heard Dr. Thornberry mention philosophy. I don't have a PhD, but I do think that when I prayed about what my message was going to be today, I had a prayer very similar to his, and that was that whatever the intention was in having me here, whatever type of instrument I was to be, that my message would somehow reach at least one set of ears in this room in a way that would be positive to them. So what I think about philosophy, well, I think that has to do about what my principles are, what guides me, the priorities I set when I make my decisions. So I speak a lot. You can tell from my accent I'm not from here. And so I get a lot of low expectations. Allows me to sneak up on some people. But I was speaking in eastern Iowa to cattle feeders from Iowa and Nebraska, and I used this picture to make some kind of point about how did you measure bunk space in this management system. And I had a guy in the back of the room raise his hand and say, "Hey, you, I bought some of those cattle out of your country. So someplace I'm getting beat up because of southeastern cattle, and someplace I'm getting beat up because I work for a global corporation, but I'm pretty used to being beat up." But I looked at that picture, and I had to have a response to that, didn't I? And I said, "Well, sir," I said, "I can assure you that's not my country, because any tires with that much tread on them, we're still running." I have spent most of my career with sale barn calves coming out of small cattle producers across the country, and I love them. I spent 8 years trying to have a positive impact on what they do. And I did that over across 5 counties in a lot of hours. And I had an impact, but my ability to impact the industry was relatively small. And then I went to Kansas State and became an extension veterinarian and started impacting producers there. And it was a bigger impact, but it was relatively small, and the resources at my disposal weren't what they are now. So I draw a check every 2 weeks from a global corporation. I'm not the only one in this room that draws their main check from a global corporation, am I? There's a lot of us in this room that sell our cattle. That ends up being where our check comes from, isn't it? If not, it's the guy we sell them to. So it's a reality, and having operated in that world for a long time, I share worldviews with y'all, and I would probably challenge you on some of them about which way is the best path forward. But so I've dealt with cattle that are definitely commodity, and definitely not something that we as an industry sometimes are proud of. I help people decommoditize these cattle, and we'll get into a little of that, and we do that a lot with our animal health program. So what I knew that I was coming here today was not to give you guys answers to all these very complex questions you have. And it's not what I do usually when I walk into an operation that's facing issues. And those issues aren't always just sick cattle. Sometimes it's how in the world can I get my son and daughter back to the farm instead of having to take a job in town. Sometimes they're really complex questions. I don't have the answer to that question, but I might be able to come up with some other questions that kind of help us get along. And that's really my goal here today with you, is for everybody in this room not to leave here with answers, but maybe a little different perspective or a better question. And this is my philosophy on life. I knew everything about animal health and most about the cattle industry when I graduated vet school. I did. That honors, I knew it. And I know now, I know less every day, but I want to understand more. And when I die, I want to know nothing and understand everything. Because when I find is when I lay down a lot of things that I want to say about animal health as being absolute, they're actually not. So, the first time I walk into an operation, what I get is, docs, what's your protocol? What's your cow vaccination program? What's your receiving calf vaccination program? So, with deference to the greatest storyteller and user of parables, a lot of what I'm going to do with you here today, I'm going to use my parables to do, because I think they're more powerful than if I come at you directly. So right up here I have 2 recipes. One, handwritten, is my great-grandmother's bread pudding recipe, biscuit pudding. Written in my grandmother's hand. My great-grandmother couldn't write. Moved her family as a sharecropper to a place where her kids could go to 12th grade instead of 8th. That was their priority as a family. On the left, I've got my wife's great aunt's possum neck bread pudding recipe from her published cookbook. Anybody ever eat a possum neck? There are no possum necks in that. That's a small community in Mississippi. No possum necks in there. Okay, safe to eat. Both of these ladies are blue ribbon cooks, fair winners, known in their communities, recipes passed down from generations. What happens if I switch these recipes between these 2 ladies? Every married guy in this room knows, because you always give some of mama's recipes to your wife, don't you? And she cooks it and she asks you, how was it? And what do you say? The first time. Not like mama's. What do you say the next time? Better than mama's. Okay? So I've used this analogy for a long time that we don't need a recipe. We need to spend time learning how to cook. Because those ladies knew how to look at that when they were mixing it and tell if it was too moist, and glance at it in the oven and turn up the broiler. And then if their ingredients changed, they might have to tweak around a little bit as they tasted as they made it. So they were cooks. Used this for a long time. I used it for about the first 5 years I was doing what I'm doing now. And then one weekend I came home on Friday, and my wife, when I come in the door, well, here's what my wife usually says. You want to go out at night? You want to go out at night and get something to eat? What was my answer the first time? No. I've been gone all week. I just want to sit here and eat a tomato sandwich. The second time it was, oh yeah, I've been looking forward all week to going out. So there's a little restaurant that's opened in town, and we go down there, and it's the kind of place we all look for. A good steak, baked potato, salad, and get in and out of there for about $20 and pull up, and there's not many people in there, no cars in the parking lot. I'm thinking, man, something else going on? Health department give them a bad review. And I go up there, and there's a chain on the door. So they had a good recipe. They knew how to cook. What did they not know how to do? They didn't know how to run a restaurant. And we spent an awful lot of our time around animal health trying to come up. I'm doing that with this microphone right here?
Just going to talk to the back of the room.
I'm going to talk to the back of the room. It's really loud to me up here, and it's probably not to you in the back. So yeah, our priority in our health program and everything we do ought to be in being better at running a restaurant, shouldn't it? Not in collecting recipes or what's the fat of the recipe. What I try to base my animal health philosophy on, and what I think you ought to base your own, is natural law. What is a natural law? Gravity is a natural law. Can you defy it? No. You can burn a lot of fuel and put a plane in the air, but you know what I can tell you? It's eventually coming down. There's never one that went up that ain't come down yet. It's natural law. And there's all sorts of natural laws in biology, around epidemiology. There's Darwin's laws. A lot of these laws also apply to business. And sometimes they're in conflict with each other if I'm looking from a single perspective. But if I can try to understand as many natural laws as I can and make what I do true to as many of those natural laws, I'm going to be successful. Or I have a lot better chance of being successful. I can still get killed by a meteor. And this is something I share with everybody in this room. And what is something that all of us in this room hold very sacred that's based on natural law? Constitution, isn't it? Those guys said so. Said this is natural law, handed down from God, that all men are created equal. These things we write down, you can try to take away and you can try to change, but eventually it's going to come back to this way because it's natural law. And so how do you take that same passion around that you have about your faith and that you have about our country about natural law, and then look for those that apply to your business and specifically to the animal health in your business. Here's what I can say about this. I respect our traditions. We're all traditions, aren't we? You know, look at the way we drive, the way we talk. We're really, really proud of where we come from and our heritage and what we do. But doing things because that's the way we've always done them is not a business model. It is not true to any natural law. As a matter of fact, it goes against them. And I learned more as a veterinarian from vet students that came into my practice to externship that had never been on a farm than I did kids that grew up on good ranches and farms and had fathers that were veterinarians and grandfathers that were veterinarians. You know why? Because all they did was ask questions I couldn't answer, or that I had to answer with this response. Why do you calve in this month? Why do you castrate here? Why do you do this? Well, that's the way we always did it. That's the way my daddy did it. My favorite set of words in trying to understand how to do business better all kind of are related to this one. Relate, relationship, relevant. This is what keeps me up at night, and this is what I think about. How can I relate to somebody else's perspective better? What can I do to improve my relationships with the people that are important to me and my family, the people I do business with, my customers? And then how can I be more relevant? I think it's a shared passion in this room, and we all want to be more relevant in the industry. We want to relate better to what we're doing. And sometimes I do that through these tools, these animal health tools. So what is the value of a tool? If I'm holding that adjustable wrench in my hand right now, what value does it have? It has no value except for scrap iron. That tool only has value in a proper application. Can I hurt myself with it? Can I round off bolts and tear up stuff with it? Can I drop it in a piece of equipment and tear the piece of equipment completely up? So it's just a tool. And oftentimes I get asked these questions that people expect me to answer with research that I can't. What's the best way to castrate? And you know what my answer usually is? The best knife cutter is better than an average bander. Or what are you trying to accomplish by castration? So in my feeder calf world, you know what we're trying to do? We're trying to have cattle at a week or 10 days when they get sick where we're no longer looking at the impacts of castration. If I'm buying him a bull, which oftentimes I have to do. That's my goal. I'm in a system. And so we band a lot of cattle with certain techniques so that we've got cattle right then that are as much like steers as we can make them, so we're not pulling them for shipping fever when actually they're just castration sequelae. And oftentimes the most value I can extract from a tool is when I use it for what I'm not, for something it wasn't intended to. Real example, ice storm in Kentucky a few years ago, and a lot of sale barns couldn't hold a sale. Trucks stuck on the road with cattle in them. The next week, one of my good backgrounders who BVD PI test had a bunch of positive animals that ended up being false positives. And so we found this flaw in that already imperfect test. And what that flaw was is if those animals had enough time to incubate by sitting in the sale barn for a week, that virus that was just from an infection would make the PI test weakly positive. We're like, well, how do you manage this? Well, it bothered me. I'm like, I know there's something there, something I can use. And I said, boy, could we take this and clean up a pretty great procurement even better by spotting those sale barns and buyers that are not getting us fresh cattle. Now, so if you sent me one that had that false positive test, I can't make a judgment on you. But if I got hundreds or thousands on you a year and your number's tipping up higher than everybody else's, it's telling me something, isn't it? It's telling me that you're not doing a good job buying, or you're trading on me, or the places you are. Now, don't even necessarily want to fire anybody there, but guess what? Are my buyers more honest if they know that I've got a way to check back on them, just like some of the policy type things that you do? Just them to know that I have the ability to kind of keep tabs on who's getting me clean, fresh cattle. And so the tool was never intended to do that. It's imperfect for doing it. But I will say that operation that already had good procurement has probably got some of the best procurement of anybody I deal with. And I probably deal with people that procure 1 million head of cattle a year to turn out stock or backgrounding, and with order buyers that ship many more than that. So is this a good question? Should I use injectable or pour-on dewormer on my cows? It is a good question. And most of the time a veterinarian would answer that by saying, well, I like the injectable better because it's more consistent. Or I like the pour-on better because it's better with flies. I got this question 2 weeks ago from a veterinarian. And I said, I don't know. I said, but here's what I would do. I said, it's hot right now, and they were weaning fall calves, so they had their hands on their cows. And I said, if them cows get a little hot, but you're still done by pretty early mid-morning and you're okay, I said, I'd be prepared to go with the pour-on because I don't have to handle their heads and I can do it. I said, if things went really, really smooth, I'd put the injectable in them because it's better and more consistent. I said, but if them cattle's hot, you better turn them out without deworming them. It's better questions, isn't it? Because if I just told him that recipe to, hey, you use injectable on your cows because it's better, and he overheated them, gathered them, and it was one of those times when it was going to be 90 degrees, 90% humidity at night, he'd kill his cows following my recommendation. It's not a bad tool, it's our skill in applying it. We got to do systems thinking better. So where is the sun in your animal health program? Most people, it's their cows, isn't it? That's kind of where you focus all your attention into your cows. What are the cows in a cow-calf operation? What is their role? I kind of look at them like they're my employees, aren't they? So what I actually produce is what? Forage? And the way I sell it is through calves, and the cows are the employees that do all that manufacturing for me. I could give you a set of recommendations on vaccinating your cows based on your cows as a son, and I would probably miss a lot of the ability to deliver value to you in animal health products. Maybe I can help you manage differently or better. Maybe I can help you market your calves differently, maybe to somebody else. And that may change the way I vaccinate my cows in order to qualify my calves to do that. So this is, again, what I'm getting down to is better questions. What are we trying to accomplish with our animal health program? A lot of people say, well, I want to protect my cows from disease. And I would say, I want to run a better restaurant. Is there anything available to me in animal health in my animal health program to help me be better and more successful at running my restaurant, at running my business? And there's a lot out there, and there's not a lot of adoption of them, and we'll talk about that some later. So now, real story, one of my mentors, and I've been blessed to always hang around with old men that somehow took me under their arm and said, I don't know, this kid ain't got much of a chance. I feel sorry for him. I'm going to try to impart some wisdom on him. I done buried most of them. One of them was Mr. Homer Tomlinson. He was a cattle buyer in the 1920s. There were no local stockyards in the 1920s. Local stockyards, and the history is great to study. I know we've got a lot of history buffs in here. Local stockyards are a fallout of World War II when there was price controls on regional markets. But there weren't if you had a local one. But back in those times, Mr. Homer would go out in the country and buy calves and assemble boxcar loads and ship them to regional markets like Nashville and Kansas City and Chicago out of Mississippi. So he told me he heard about this man in South Mississippi that owned all these cows scattered over multiple counties, and he went down there to try to trade cattle with him. And he said he gets in the car with the old guy and said they drive down through, and he said, man, there's nothing but thickets and briar patches. And he's thinking, man, this was a waste of my time. There ain't no cattle here. And he says they finally come out into the open, and the old man stops the old car, pulls a sack out behind the seat, walks out in the open, and starts pouring salt right down the middle of a railroad track. Started hollering. He said cows came from everywhere. He said, I bought several boxcars a year of this from him. But he said, he asked the old man, he says, sir, aren't you a little concerned about salting those cattle on that railroad track? And the man replied, son, anytime I can cross a whippoorwill cow with a CNG locomotive, I do so at a profit. So Mr. Homer told me that story, and I knew that it was a parable just like one from Jesus. It's a simple story, it's funny, it's memorable. But that was the first value-added calf guy. He said, who's paying the most for calves? And what does it take to sell him one? Now, I'm not recommending all y'all buy a place adjacent to a railroad and try to cut that kind of deal. But I'm going to expand on that analogy a little more, and you'll be the first crowd I ever did it with. So this is a picture of the cattle trails. Man, one of the most famous times, traditional, all these Western movies and all about it, all those famous cattle drives. The Chisholm Trail and the Goodnight Loving out of Texas and then going on up through Oklahoma and Kansas. Sorry, I don't know the trails up here. How long did this last? Fortunes made, successful. How long did it last? 50 years? 8 or 10 years? 8 or 10 years. Did those trails start out in one place? As we went further north, did them trails stay the same all the way through? No, why not? They kept building the railroad a little further, station a little further, didn't they? Which was a little closer to these cattle. So the first year they drove cattle, they drove them, I don't know, to Emporia, and the next year they drove them to Dodge City. They kept changing, kind of changing where those cattle need to go to make the most money with them, or get them, be first to market with them before it was flooded and all that sort of stuff. So I got on there about the Ellis Cox Trail. Anybody ever heard of it? So Ellis Cox was my fourth great grandfather out of Mississippi. He was killed on a cattle drive to Missouri in 1858. Now, nobody's ever heard about no Ellis Cox Trail. And that was even shorter lived, because my family went into Mississippi in the 1840s. And they just had gotten a real excess of cattle where you could drive them to St. Louis, where the railroad was then, and make money on them. And not only getting killed, but then the Civil War came and there was no excess of cattle down there, was it? So those business models, where the railroad was, has tended to change over time. And those that kept driving cattle to where the railroad was yesterday ain't got no trails named after them, or no legacy. Some other good questions. How much does a case of pink eye cost? 1,000 people can quote it to you. They'll say, well, this much medicine, 25 pounds, blah, 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 blah. That ain't no good answer. What if it was a registered bull? What if it was the first case and you didn't treat it with something that could keep that animal from shedding for the next week and it infected another 100 calves? I can make it worse. What if you forward contracted your calves right now for fall delivery and got a good price and the market does what a lot of people expect it to do, which is what? Be weaker. And you have a little pink eye outbreak and you can't deliver that 3 loads. The market goes down $100 a head. What does it cost you? It costs you $100 a head on everything you got. And it might just have took that 1 or 2 more calves to keep you from being able to meet your contract. That guy's going to say, you know what, man, I love you calves. Man, I love doing business with you. And call me again next year. So if you're only using pink eye vaccine or whatever your program is to prevent pink eye, not to protect your marketing, you may not be using the product in a way that has the most value to you. Does that make sense? The most value to you may be in protecting that marketing risk. Or that may be a risk you hadn't realized that exists all the times that you're not addressing now that maybe you need to figure out what to do. Maybe when you see a bunch of flies or a bunch of seed heads 6 or 8 weeks from marketing, you ought to start getting nervous because you realize something could come in there and mess you up. How long should your breeding season be? We can go to our Great Plains University and answer that, wouldn't it? Say pull your bulls in 90 days, 120 days. Some of you say 60 days, wouldn't you? Good questions, good answers. No. Good question is, why would you sell an open cow? Why would you sell a cull? I got the technology to move your breeding season wherever you want it to right here. Pretty good at it. Pretty good at it. We don't have to send a cull to sale at the time of year when they're the cheapest. When we can take a cow that's missing our operational objectives and maybe sell her at a premium to another cattleman that she just fits. Can you buy and use a product that don't work and make money with it? That's against my principles as a veterinarian. I lost an argument with the multi-state beast initiative on value-added feeder calves because they wanted to move Histopheles vaccine from their program. Now I want to tell you, I've taken Histopheles vaccine out of, I'm not going to say a number, it'd be, you wouldn't believe it, and it wouldn't sound good. There's no telling how many cattle. Because I know a single dose on arrival in a commingled feeder calf doesn't give me a benefit, and I know it's a relatively harsh vaccine, so I've taken it out. And I argued for that vaccine there. Why? Because they got 2 markets for their cattle. Well, actually, it would be 3, boy. If they could get them to Pennsylvania, that would be the biggest premium. If they can get them to Ohio and Illinois, that'd be bigger. Or that would be a little less. And then if they go to eastern Nebraska, Iowa, that would be a little less. And they go down to Texas, they'd be the cheapest. Well, guess who's scared to death of Haemophilus and uses a lot of the vaccine? Those Midwestern feeders. Which means that me using a product that don't work and I don't believe in might make him more likely to bid on my cattle. And even if he didn't buy them, he could bump them 1 or 2 bids. And I got a vaccine that costs very little. Does that make any sense? What am I trying to accomplish with that animal health product? I'm trying to maybe market my cattle. I'm trying to get somebody else to buy them. So I'm going to tell you a better questions story. 3 or 4 years ago, I actually went up to an operation in the Dakotas, a registered Angus operation, and I did a talk to them on legacy and my dimensional talk, which is about incorporating more things into your business other than just the next turn of profit. How to take some longer term views about family, about community, about legacy. From there, I went to Eastern Wyoming to do 3 meetings with, and I'm not recommending anything over anything. I think Superior Livestock was a co-sponsor of those with Soetis. Went in the first night, 150 cattlemen in the room, and I speak on feeder calf health. And I could tell them guys kind of like y'all, they really didn't give me much credibility because I was just this old sale barn guy from the Southeast. I didn't reach them like I wanted to reach them. I said, man, I just don't have the right question for them. I know I need a better question. Next night I'm up there and I got an even bigger crowd and I got my question. So I was with very traditional producers that were often doing things a lot like their dad, which was what? Calve them out, drive them up to the mountains, drive them down, sell them. Why weren't they listening to me? Because they see the results of the Superior auction on calves from up there versus where I'm from, and they saying, you know what, we topping it, and he's going to come tell us what to do. He's not incredible. Don't listen to him. So I got my question the second night, and I looked out in the audience, didn't know anybody there, and I said, how many in this room sold your heifer calves for more than your steers? No hands went up. And I said, how many in this room? Anybody? 2 guys' hands went up, and I said, stand up and tell me what you did, how that happened, that shouldn't happen in the market. What was their answer? They sold for replacement heifers. One of the guys' heifers brought $200 a head, more than his steers. And so I said, what'd you do to those heifers? He said, well, we got a good vaccination program, double vaccinated them, weaned them. I said, who bought them? Said a guy out of Texas bought them. They'd been droughted down there. Now, would that guy out of Texas have bid on those unweaned single-dose heifers? No. So there I sat with a bunch of very humble cattlemen that had walked in there with their chests poked out because their cattle were topping the Superior sale. And I told them, I said, you ain't got much to be proud of when you're selling replacement quality females for feeder cattle. Get your better questions. The other thing is just because you're a single source and working with procurement so much of my life, some of the biggest wrecks I see are where we're doing things right and all that is because we disobey these laws of nature and disease, this natural law. If you got a big extensive ranch and it takes you a week to gather all these cattle that have never met each other before, and you're putting new cattle in the pen every day as you do it, and you kind of short wean them once you get them all gathered and ship them to a feed yard, you know what you got? You got a wreck on par what I can't create buying cattle from different people in a sale barn. You've done everything wrong as far as stress. You've done everything wrong as far as epidemiology. And you also just fooled the guy that got them into thinking they weaned because they're not walking and balling. But you got some cattle stressed a week ago that went to incubating and getting their deal going, and it was just like building a fire. What do? Be a little one, throw a little kindling to it, throw a little bit more kindling to it. And pretty soon you got something you can't put out with a fire truck. So we might have always done it that way, but I'm working with people right now that would take that same herd and they would ship mixed loads, steers and heifers with a 200-pound weight variation as they got them, straight to the feed yard. Feed yard is tickled to death with them, changed their stars on health. They ain't vaccinated, nothing different. And then the feed yard knows they're going to do a little sorting and doing it later. So we might have done it one way for 50 years. That didn't mean it was right. There are trains on the track. This is from 2 years ago, and this comes from a global corporate company that impacts us all. And all I want you to read is that last line about antibiotic use. They say if you sell meat, milk, or eggs to Walmart, you will publicly disclose your antibiotic use. So we had a little vote this morning about some public disclosure from other people's business, didn't we? So this means that if you sell them meat, milk, and eggs, you're going to tell how much antibiotic you're using. We would already be doing this, but we don't know how we're going to count yet. Is a dose of Draxxin that lasts 8 days 1 dose or 8 doses? Is it 200 milligrams? Or how do we measure it? That's a pretty big train, and it's on the track and rumbling. We will get there. We've already had a big announcement from one of our biggest feeders saying we've reduced our antibiotic use by 20%. What'd they do? They took Thailand liver abscess control out of the last 30 days. At the same time, so the other one was front page of their website for days. This one's the next click. And it says, you will promote transparency by providing progress reports to Walmart and publicly reporting against their own corporate animal welfare position on an annual basis. Basically the same thing. You're going to report to us and then publicly report. And when I hear publicly report, it's like, kind of like them ads that's in the paper when somebody gets divorced, says I'm not responsible for debts other than my own, or when we settle an estate. This is not mandated by government. I don't even know this is mandated by Walmart. This is their customer, or at least a subset of their customers that they very much want to please because they think they're valuable enough to make us bend to do it. So this starts off, goes to the packer and just to the feed yard. Does it come downhill? Absolutely it does. What's the problem with having both of these at the same time? And that is, it's real easy to use less antibiotic and have sicker cattle that don't last as long if we don't change anything else. See, they're diametrically opposed to each other if our antibiotics actually work and do what we say they do. So if Temple Grandin say liver abscesses are a welfare indice, which she does, and we quit using the antibiotic and we don't change anything else and we produce 60% liver abscesses, what's the consumer going to think? If we have to report that liver abscess each day as a dose and I tell them each animal got 159 doses of antibiotic, what are they going to think? Can we explain it to them? Maybe you and I could over a beer with an hour for each one, but we don't have a voice to get to them. I'm not taking any position here on anything. I'm just trying to talk to you about things that make me stay up at night. When you lay down at night, if you really want to think about relating, who is your customer and what keeps them up at night? So if right now you're selling your cattle and they go into our existing feedlot system, which will include guys in this room up to ones that feed 1 million head a year, and I'm not saying all those are together, but you're in there in the same system we've been going into for a long time, minus a few people we used to have, quite a few. If you want to participate in that program and you can figure out what's bothering them, what gives them fits, and you can scratch that itch, you can operate in that world successfully. Even if you have to hold your nose to do it because of some other philosophical view you have. Or you ask yourself, who could be my customer and what do I need to do to be relevant to them to make them buy my cattle? So how do I get that droughted out, oil well owning lawyer in Texas to pay a whole bunch of money for my heifers instead of them being feeder cattle? How do I get my cattle into another deal? And I think this is philosophically a very good way to go if somebody that's buying your cattle bothers you on principles. Because if they're buying your cattle and making money on them and using that against you, then you're part of your own problem. If you could handle your cattle otherwise and put them in a system where those dollars you didn't feel like was working against you, without making any judgment about what's going on where. This is one that you ought not have to take a picture of it or whatever, just put it in your mind, because if you want to understand our industry, if you want to understand your customer, if you want to understand where I build business models for people to buy adjoining ranches and bring all their kids and son-in-laws and all back to the farm, this is one of the most important. This is our national calving distribution. And what you can see up there is about 65% of our calves are born in 3 months, which is really good because we run our feedlots and packing houses like they do the Alaska salmon canning industry. We just mothball them 9 months out of the year and crank them back up for 3 months, don't we? Do you know what our feedlot placements are? Pretty dang close to 2 million a month. Pretty close. It might go from 1.6 to 2.3. Do you know what our kill is? Just about the same every day. Is this a problem for some people in this room? So if you want to do anything to make a bad relationship with a packer, you know what he can do? He can look at it right there. He can say, I don't need them. I got all the cattle I can kill in June. I don't even take a phone call from anybody that can't sell me anything but June, July, and August cattle. If you want to be relevant to him, you got to go find some other people with you that fill all them other months where he keeps him up at night struggling to do. I spent 2 weeks ago, I spent several days in Louisiana with a really good friend of mine. He's done a great job, Rayburn Smith, down there getting a 90% vaccination rate and all in the cattle in his sale barn. Now he's also a superior rep. So here are these eared quarter Brahma cattle all go to Texas and New Mexico and Arizona, don't they? That's what the dogma is. You know where all those cattle went this year? Went to Nebraska and Colorado. Why? Because they weaned them 2 months ago. And they don't fall in that kill window where all these are. And they're not commodity cattle, even though they're not like other cattle. I mean, even though they are commodity cattle. If a bunch of cattlemen in Florida get together and put together this program where they're going to, it could be the Seminole tribe, it could be several other different groups of cattlemen, they're going to go into beef business themselves, and they're going to raise it in Florida, and they're going to kill it in Florida, and they're going to take them away from the big entities. Have those big entities blacklisted, blackballed any of them? Not that I know of. Why? Because they're on off-season cattle too. And so even though they're trying their best to take their cattle away from those people, they can't afford to say, don't do business with me. I work with the stocker business all the time, and I see letters come out of large feed yards dictating what people do, except to my bigger guys that are filling these holes that keep them up at night. They don't get the letter. They don't get the demands. Why? Because they're important to them. So you go home tonight and you think about, man, what is my friend in this room that's a feeder need from me? And look, the business I work in every day has transformed so much in the last 5 or 6 years. It's not in the news. It's not anywhere. But there's not a whole lot of big stocker background operations right now that don't have some type of ongoing trade with a feed yard. And that feed yard probably has some type of ongoing relationship with a packer. And we're talking cattle 8 or 10 months out. I don't know where it falls through all the legal definitions and all, but all of the we've been short of cattle. There's not enough to fill up every packing house every day or every feed yard every day. And everybody has scrambled to secure their supply through every different way possible. And the guys that have been killed by the system that have figured out in some ways how to make themselves valuable in that system if they want to stay there are surviving and in some cases thriving. That's not a judgment. It's not a marching orders to tell you what to do. But most of us tend to focus on ourselves and what's important to us, and we become our own sun. And the rest of the world revolves around us. Just like for a long time, people thought the earth was the center of the universe, didn't they? Because they lived here. Think on understanding your own business model, where it works, what your management constraints are, what your resource opportunities are, what the regulation issues are for you. Understand everything is about your model. And I applaud you guys for working as hard as anybody I've ever been around to do that. Work just as hard to try to understand better those are your customers. So that's what it's all about, isn't it? Beef in the case. Anything striking about that picture? Anybody know what a Beyond Burger is? Huh? It's animalless meat. That's not in that's Safeway. That's not in the tree hugger section or whatever you want to call it, over there with all that stuff, that a lot of us don't buy. It's sitting right in the middle of a meat case. Beyond Meat, the Beyond Burger. This is their website and what they're touting. That meat gives you all the things we see from our enemies, huh? The way we see it. Meat gives you cancer risk, heart disease, 51% of greenhouse gas emissions, blah, blah, blah. 66 billion animals that got to die every year so you can eat meat. Man, we can offer you an alternative that punches all these buttons. Does this scare anybody? It don't scare you. Does it concern you? Are you worried about their ability to get their message out versus ours? I am. Who is it? So Tyson's invested in that one. Well, man, Tyson's one of our biggest beef packer. You know, why aren't they out here? Why would they ever consider something that might take a piece of beef off somebody's plate and put something else on there? And I want to show you that figure right there. So I just clipped this off the webpage. That 150 million, that's the amount of money that Tyson has in alternative protein venture capital fund. Would that pretty much dwarf severely the checkoff dollars? Would it dwarf the checkoff dollars plus all the money we're spending on beef cattle research in our land-grant universities? Probably. This is one place. Who's their partners in there? Bill Gates, the guy from Virgin Airlines, General Mills. And that statement down there just makes me as a cattleman recoil, but then as somebody who understands what that guy's job is as CEO, when he says, the reason Beyond Meat made sense to us is because we are focused not only on animal protein, but protein overall. We want to make sure we are driving protein growth, and it doesn't matter to us where it comes from. So if you looked at someone like Tyson's, they're a company, and they're responsible to their shareholders. Beef is the biggest part of their business and the least profitable. I'm not defending them, but they don't see themselves in the beef business. They have to make every decision they make about, well, how does that impact our trade relationship with pork to China or Russia? Or how does this, where we take a stand on this issue, impact us getting all those leg quarters that are 6 months old in the freezer to Russia? Their son is not beef. I wish it was. But I think if we were all honest about it and we were put in that guy's shoes, we might sometimes make the same decisions he did based on what his job is in the business he's running. I'm not defending him, but I'm saying I have to work really hard. But I spend more time trying to think about what's keeping this guy up at night and how can I make myself more relevant to him if I want to do business with him. How am I on my time? Good? So relating. So why would beef processors and purveyors be so interested in this product? And not just a simplistic answer from you like, well, because people want to buy it. So those two patties right there weighing a quarter pound each, I think retail for around $7. Do you feel like on those two meals that grocery store probably fares pretty good? Do you think given that's pea protein, that that there's a lot of profits built into that system? Do you think? Yeah, it is. Do you think that maybe the grocery store says, you know what, I'm going to put that there and I may have to throw it away the way they have about organic products sometimes. I know I'm going to have to discount some of it and throw it away. But the people that come in here that's kind of semi-vegetarian, if I don't have that product, they shop somewhere else. And that's the same people that buy my fair trade coffee I make $4 a pound on, and my high-end paper towels, and that produce that I've got the biggest margins on. So they can actually do just like I did on that vaccine, can't they, that didn't work? They say, I don't care if we have to throw it out. That customer we're targeting to get in here because they buy the stuff that makes us the most money, don't shop here if I don't have it. Because the 2 times a year she eats beef, eats meat, she's going to eat that type of product. They're making very logical decisions based on the business they're in. And I don't defend those decisions, but I got to say, boy, we got to challenge ourselves to make logical decisions about the business we're in. So, from NCBA, because that's where I could find it. We talk a lot about these value-added products, but the truth is only, and this is just from the second quarter of this year, 4.3% of dollars in the beef industry are from product that has production claims. Now, CEB is not a production claim. Production claims organic, natural, grass-fed, production claims. Why is this so small? That's a dang good question. Who wants it small? Could the people that want it small have tricked you into wanting it small too? I don't have that answer, by the way. I think you better be thinking about it. The biggest obstacle we have right now to producing more product that the consumer seems to be demanding, the local and all that I heard the guy talk about yesterday, is we don't have packing plants to kill it in. Because you can't take 40 calves to one of these big plants and then kill it for you and keep it segregated. They're built on what model? An efficiency model. Chop them up all these different ways and go down all these lines, and we have a very hard time in those plants doing it. So who wants it this way, and why is it that way? Is it the only way? I was at a presentation by Rabobank a week or two ago, and asked for the slides for another one. But there was a lot of frustration in that room with the cattlemen, because you know what, we've got this great story, you know, we are sustainable. And I know, I've already had people threaten my life because I even used the word. But we are sustainable. We do have a great story to tell. Our product's safe. It's nutritious. It's sound. You actually live longer. It doesn't give you more heart disease. We got all this story. And he says, but we have this decline in share and all that sort of thing going on. And people are struggling with that. And the answer's right here. We keep making these arguments over here on the blue part. You know, it's safe, affordable, tastes good. And our consumers, so we're making a science argument, an economic argument. What arguments are our consumer giving us now, more so than ever before? They're giving us an emotional argument. And not to be sexist here, but it's kind of like me arguing with my wife. Sometimes I got all the facts, but she got the emotion. And every one of those arguments I ever even won, I lost. Does that make sense? Because she'd leave mad. So they're trying to get their head around some type of emotional things. And I don't understand them. But dadgummit, I'm trying to. Whether it's how we reach them and educate them, or whether it's how I participate in something they seem to want to do that would support our industry. So what we got now is just like when the railroads came and they built a new rail hub somewhere else. We got disruptive technologies. We got technologies, and technology is broader than you normally think of it, impacting our industry right now. And the good thing is there's a lot of research on disruptive technologies and about early adopters. And I'm not going to give you my gypsum story. I really wanted to, since my friend from Mississippi was here yesterday. I'm not going to give it. I'll tell some of y'all about it later if you want me to. So this work was actually done in the 1950s on farmers on how they adopted hybrid corn. And this is natural law. And the reason it's natural law, because it's actually Darwin. Darwin's not man came from apes. It's not just survival of the fittest. Here's what Darwin says. The environment invariably changes. Climate change or whatever. Invariably the environment changes. And those that are best able to adapt and fit thrive. Those that can't adapt and become misfit don't. It's natural law. What the research shows on the crop farmers and on nearly every other industry is that the innovators and early adopters are the survivors. When technology comes along, it makes you more efficient. And I'm going to explain that in a little more detail to y'all later. It's natural, it's nature. She's not friendly. If you're not competitive, you don't compete. And if something makes you more competitive, you got to do it. And boy, they were pretty rough on those guys that were the last ones to adopt technology, weren't they? The laggards. Does that mean every technology is good and every pioneer is going to be successful and a billionaire? No. There's a lot of risk that comes with being the innovator. And the sweet spot is in those late innovators through early adopters and maybe the early majority. Now, the mirror questions. If I'm still doing what my daddy was doing, am I doing what my daddy was doing? If my daddy was one of the first guys to use a round baler, he was like one of the first ones to use one. He wasn't the first to own them because he rented one for $5 a bale and used it. He was one of the first 2 or 3 in the community. If I was still just rolling mine up and setting it in a fence row without a shed over it and doing all that stuff he did, because that's the way we always do it, am I doing what my daddy did? Hell no. My daddy was an early adopter that embraced technology and used it to make his operation more efficient. I'm practicing a tradition or something and going through the motions of being in business instead of actually being in it. Does this mean compromising your principles? Heck no. You got to, whatever those are, and I think we share a lot of them. I think our industry's a tribe that almost across the board, no matter which group we were meeting with today, shares a lot of the same principles. Now, we all get misguided and lost in the wilderness at times. But I will never compromise mine knowingly and what my priorities are. So here's that corn farmer. So there were those that, when the tractors came out, said, no way I'm going to pay more for a tractor than 40 acres of land cost. I'm going to keep my mule. And in the 30s, hybrid seed come along. Somebody, no way I'm going to buy seed every year. I'm going to keep doing my own. Combines, commercial fertilizer, herbicides and pesticides, Roundup Ready, a contractual relationship with a company to provide seed and stuff, and then a market to sell it into. Now, if you're still hauling your corn to the elevator, is there anybody? Well, there are. There's some Amishmen for sure, I guess, that never got on any of those bandwagons that's competitive now. If they're just hauling commodity corn for $3.15 a bushel or whatever to the local elevator. Can you do it? So, this one scares me, but it's just reality, and I want to show it to you. So this is from Rabobank as well. This is the corn farmers, and this is the value of what they produce. And I pointed this out to their worldwide economist guy, and he said, wow, I hadn't seen it. You see that green thing in there? What's that? That's the cost of seed, chemical, and fertilizer. Let's just call it seed and chemical. What has it done over time? So in the way we farm corn today, who is the innovator? It's a really good question. Is the innovator Monsanto? To some degree it is, isn't it? And those early adopters of it. Now this is a real scary question. Can they determine how much land rent's for? Can they? You're dang right they can, because we produce corn to about a break-even on average, don't we? And if they raise the price of that technology and people do their break-evens, what do they have to do? They bid less for the land. They don't even have to buy the land to own it. No judgment here. Now, if you choose not to plant those technologies now, are you competitive? You sometimes, yes. Yeah, I'm going to show some. There is examples of that. But maybe not just hauling to the same elevator that I hauled to in the 1960s and trying to compete on $3.15 a bushel corn. Does that make any sense? So this is disruptive technology. It happened. I don't have to know why. I just have to understand it's happening and the impacts it has on me, or the impacts it has on my industry. So what about a cattle feeder? I'll use a little example that's a little closer to home instead of just my parables. So I would make a guess that an implant and a beta agonist are worth about $100 a head. Okay, that fair? One of my cattle feeders in here, is that okay? I just made up my number. So I can choose, I can say on principles, you know, it keeps us from being able to export to Europe, and boy, I know the science says it's safe, but something just don't feel right about it to me, so I ain't gonna do it. I can make that decision. I like doing the way the things always are. So that takes $100 a head out of my break even. Can I go to the sale barn tomorrow and fill my pens? Can I? No. On a 500-pound calf, I'm $20 a hundredweight out. So another good question, who gets the price, who gets the benefit of that technology? The guys would be most likely to vote to get rid of it. Because the feedlot doesn't make any money on this technology. The company that makes it makes money, and the cow-calf guy gets it because a lot of these guys are bidding pretty close to break even all the way through. Or at least that money's in the calculation, even if they're bidding to profit. So, recent true story. Cattle feeder calls me and says, I want to try this beta agonist. I'm like, well, first thing you need to do is call your packer and make sure it's okay. Small feeder, big backgrounder, wants to sell one or two loads of fat cattle a week. I've got a lot of these stories. He decided to try it, and he put 2 pins on it, 2 not, and then he ran his break-evens, and the cattle he gave this to lost money. He said, man, this stuff don't work. It cost me $4,000. And I said, well, I looked at it, and what it was, 2 pins versus 2 pins is not a study. That's random error. And I said, look, I have all the confidence in the world that product works, but I don't care whether you use it or not. And I don't. I said, but if you don't use it, get paid for not using it. What you can't do is sell against people that are and bid against them for feeder cattle when they got a $100 head start on you. It's not. So even if you were sitting there with the best grain basis in the country, the cheapest local grain, maybe worth $60 a head from you, it'd be hard to overcome that one, wouldn't it? So here's my 11-year-old planting corn with disruptive technology, a hoe. That's a really good friend of mine in Mississippi. And so I bought a grist mill. And I don't know why, this is what I prayed, and this is what I was led to tell y'all about today. I'd always kind of wanted the grist mill just to play with. I kind of love mechanical stuff and tinkering and history. And I found a super one. I'm talking about a special one. And I bought it. And I'd also been looking for a way to put my children in business like I was from the time I was about 8 years old, with bottle calves and truck patches and watermelons and peas. And I said, boy, this is perfect. I can't do it with cattle because I fly too much and my wife and girls can't get up cattle if I get some out. I don't know who I can depend on as a neighbor. So this is a friend of mine in Mississippi whose wife gave me her garden spot because I got 100 seeds from USDA out of the seed bank of a variety that's got my family name on it that I don't even know the last time seed was available that was in that seed bank. So if y'all want to abolish USDA, wait just a little while because there's a few more varieties of seeds I want to get out of there. And I wrote them a nice letter telling them exactly what I was doing with this grist mill, and I wanted to bring back an old variety that was local and had heritage to it and was selected at a time when they wasn't worried about efficiency, just the quality of the milling products they produced. And them folks put 100 seeds in an envelope and sent them to me, and I didn't even pay the postage. There's some good stories around too, isn't it? So that's Huffman corn going there. What's it going to be worth? Well, there's varieties I don't think as interesting as this one. It seeds $15 a pound. And the people that selling that seed fall into two categories. Either them that combine run it, which is improper, or some commune somewhere that's got a quarter acre and shelling everyone for seed corn. Any of y'all know anything about the open pollinated varieties, that's not the way you maintain and improve an open pollinated variety corn. So there my girls are. That's how much. And so this is Facebook, and I'm an old codge, and I can use it, but my 11-year-old and my 4-year-old can motor on it. And my 11-year-old even writes this in third person sometime like I'm the one writing it. That's 16 days worth of growth on one of my corns. So I got about 10 acres. So here's a true story. I don't have any corn yet. I started this in January and didn't even think I'd have to plant corn. I done rebuilt a John Deere 7100 planter and took sod to ground. I done learned how to kill Bermuda grass in corn, which ain't no easy deal. You do it with a backpack sprayer. A friend of mine's backgrounders made a minor investment in a restaurant, and then they closed it and built a brand new restaurant, a multi-million-dollar restaurant. He said, and I go by to do some health issues with him, and he said, Robin, you want to go down here and see the restaurant? I said, man, I'd love to see it. So he takes me in, it's wonderful. And he introduced me, he says, hey, this is so-and-so. She's the wheel horse around here. She's the real person that gets things done. And he says, hey, this is my buddy Robin. He's one of the best feeder calf veterinarians in the country, which he's wrong, but I still like to hear it. And he said, he also makes some grits. She said, really? She said, tell me what you're doing. I said, well, I wanted my daughters to be in business. I thought it was important they grew up understanding agriculture from a full perspective. And so I've got an old mill and I got some air. She says, what'd she say? I want everything you've got. And when I took it to her, I said, have you ever cooked any stone ground grits before? She said, oh yeah. She says, I'm a French culinary arts trained chef. She's run restaurants in Las Vegas and New York. I kind of think the Lord put her there for me. I don't know. I ain't saying I'm good. I might just be lucky to have somebody looking out for me. So that's her restaurant's Facebook post. I ain't even in business yet. So I got some corn. So when they told me they're opening and I found out the governor's coming and all, and I had invited myself to a party I shouldn't have, I tried to back out and they said, no, we want you to come. And I got to think about it. I said, man, wouldn't it be nice if I had some local corn? And I knew a guy local there that grew some white corn, just hybrid pioneer corn. And I went and got some of it and I ground them up, some grits for their shrimp and grits, and took 2 of them. Took a Saturday of mine to grind it and do it because I was very inefficient in there with colanders and stuff trying to get what I wanted. True Milling, that's my daughter's little business. They don't even have open yet. How many, yeah. There it is. That's from this week. Another one. That's my cornmeal. My girl's cornmeal. She's got 8,000 followers in that one local restaurant on Facebook, and BQA's only got 7,200. And she's put my name out there for me. My girl's business out there for me. Has done bought in, bragging on me, bragging on what the girls are doing. Went the wrong way there, sorry. Thought I hid this one. It's a reality check. So that's about 4 acres of an old variety of corn in Mississippi called White Mosby that my grandfather planted, made my great-grandfather. That's a friend of mine growing that for me. He wouldn't even let me pay him anything, so I bought him a piece of equipment, took to him I knew he'd like. It's the kind of people we do business with, isn't it? Says, I'm going to do that for your girls. You ain't going to give me nothing. I said, man, let me buy the fertilizer. I gave him the seed. No, you ain't doing nothing. I'm doing it for your girls. I believe in what you're doing with your girls. I want to do it. I walked down the field to check that corn. You know what that is in my hand? That's a little piece of Indian pottery. And when my people settled that country, they settled on what they called old fields. So here I am, and him and me fretting over that corn. And maybe 600 or 1,000 years ago, some Native American woman was fretting over some corn there too, isn't it? Tomorrow's not guaranteed. So where am I? I don't know if I'm an innovator, an early adopter, or just stupid. I know that I'm going to accomplish what I want to my girls no matter how the business runs out. I'm going to show them that this is a country where they can be independent and they can do whatever they want to do. They don't have to depend on a job for somebody. The guy I got my corn from is one of the biggest corn farmers I know, and I'm not going to tell you how many acres because you figure out who it is. Let's just say way up into tens of thousands of acres. And he actually grows a lot of white corn. So he's not really participating fully in the Monsanto ADM deal. He's marketing his corn directly to millers, exports an extreme amount of corn. He's also a cattle feeder now. You know why? Because he cleans all that corn for export, and all his cattle neighbors wanted it, but they all wanted him to bring it on Saturday, and they all had a 3-inch auger. And he said, I let my help off on Saturday. So I'm the one out there with the truck on Saturday trying to unload a truck of grain dust with a 3-inch auger. He built a confinement barn. Put Wagyu bulls on Charolais cows. All kind of stuff that don't make sense to me as a cattleman. I'm not going to tell you what his price is on those cattle. But I will tell you he's already built a second one. Now he's shipping 2 loads a week. That he's had restaurateurs out of New York that told the purveyor, I will not use cattle out of confinement. That's come to this place and met him, just like I did that lady in that restaurant and walked through there and saw how clean it was, that they tilled it every day. They kept it bedded. It didn't stink. Those cattle were happy and says, I want this beef. I came here thinking I didn't want it out of confinement. That little yellow block down there at the bottom, at 7 o'clock, he had never seen his corn on the menu. And in that restaurant I'm talking about, that's his corn. This guy's got tens of thousands of acres to worry about, and he's texting me pictures of 3.5 acres of pasture that a center pivot crosses, that he can put in a variety of corn for me and protect it from cross-pollination without me asking. So he's my early adopter. But I'm scratching some of the same itch in somebody from my own tribe that consumers won't scratch, isn't it? He wants to see his stuff on the menu. He wants to go somewhere and eat it. I'm going to wrap up. There are 2 solid, sound, natural law-based responses to a changing, disruptive environment. I can adapt to it. And the best way to do that is to figure out my existing customers, the people I'm selling to, what's keeping them up at night, and how can I somehow fit better there where that I'm not irrelevant because all my cattle are dying in June and they got all them they need. Or I can change environments. Some of our ancestors, when they changed environments, they moved somewhere, didn't they, where there was better land and better farms or more water or whatever that was. Or I might just need to see if there's not a different railhead or whatever I can deliver my cattle to. And I think this is one that I say every day. And I know one thing about the people in this room. There's a heck of a lot of courage in this room. I don't think I have to grant y'all no courage. I think we all want a little more serenity, and I think we're all in pursuit of a little more wisdom. And so that's my prayer this morning. That's my prayer every day, and just let you know that, oh, am I done? Time? Okay, I'm gonna stop. And I meant to get to a little scenarios. And I'll take a minute. If you got some problem right now that you're facing, like a drought or a fire, throw them new questions at us how you can use animal health to do it. I'm gonna get to my end here. Thank you. Thank you from Zoetis, and thank you from me for what you do. Appreciate y'all.